Alrighty, so welcome to our first match. We have the Monogatari. Sorry, this is Madoka Mirror. Is that right, Ken?
Madoka Magica Mirror Mat.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a fun one for sure. Definitely excited to see how this plays out. Definitely excited to see what the builds are like, because Madoka, I mean, was a pretty popular deck back in the day for sure. We saw it a lot, and players here have already decided first and second.
Yeah,
and
so looks like they're both discarding their level 1 vanillas, which is pretty good stuff for both of them. That's their bond target. So
absolutely,
if they attack on their first turn and have their bond, they can immediately go +1 on their second turn. It's a pretty good start in that sense, but I think Hansen, Fresh Cabbage has discarded 2 gold bars already, so it's a bit of a disadvantage in terms of climaxes, but we'll see how it goes from there.
Does get a very safe start, and the third level 1 coming out. Cameras appear to be wrong on the stream, apparently. We'll get that checked out quickly.
Right, so Vince gets to scry one there with his Mummy and Psycho, but he probably won't be able to answer Fresh Cabbage's attacker in the middle yet. But instead he plays the Cube down, so even if his own attacker in the middle, you clock on for it. So both not bad as a start. I think Fresh Cabbage is able to maintain his first player advantage and is mitigating a little bit of the disadvantage he got from losing those climaxes early. Still just some early game stuff, so we don't know how it's going to go.
Yeah, looks like some pretty similar builds though.
Yeah, they're both playing Door and Gold Bar, which honestly I'm kind of surprised. I think every Madoka player today is playing that Climax lineup, but honestly I was expecting a bit more book because the set has a few decent events that you don't mind drawing into, and you know, having climaxes in your hand in this age was sometimes a bit more of a liability than something that you wanted, because it is harder to discard climaxes. You can only play one per turn, so if you draw into your second one on the following turn, it is a bit rough for you. But hopefully they do get to use their climaxes to their advantage and show us that they are indeed making the right line of play. Yeah. All right.
Looks like a pretty safe and stable level 1 so far. That was one of the bonders that just went, and another one on the other side. So,
all right. Yeah. So both of them have played this level 025 Cube. Its only line of text is that the magic character in your center slot gains clock on call. So this time Vince has used it to keep his character on the board, and Hansen has played one, but it can't give itself clock on core if it's in the middle, so he's just using it as a bit, while his 3/5 attacker is a step over Vince's Cube. So right here, Hansen has again established a lead on the board, but
that's a great bond.
Advantage. Yes. It's a good way to start the game. But yeah, Vince is not behind in terms of card advantage, so I think he's in a decent position. Yeah,
look at that brainstorm, well. And we see that beautiful event just floating out in that discard pile for later on in the game.
Yeah, Sayaka's Wish. It's definitely a key card in this deck. It's a 2/1 counter event where you can sacrifice one of your characters with Sayaka in its name to add the top card of your clock back to your hand and send the event to memory. It's very cheap heal, and it also lets you just get value out of your Apple Bond later in the game because it salvages a 1/0 vanilla, which a lot of the time later in the game is not all that useful. It also lets you dodge the drawback of your level 3 Sayaka, which goes to memory upon reversing. So yeah, really it's just a all-around solid card. Even today people try to make use of it, so yeah, hopefully that comes in use.
And down comes the climax to try and push through some damage. I think this is a great play.
Yeah, it's definitely strong. It is quite early for a climax to be coming down in 2012, though. This is Vince's second turn, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. but just a little bit more pressure coming out than, which might just, what you don't want to see, especially back then, was leaving people at 0-6, giving them all the control in the world over what they were going to do at level 1, and
Yeah, for sure.
Just giving them that little push and saying, okay, well, I have a tempo now. The pressure is on you to set up your bonds, set up that board. Is really quite important. Although the excessive amount of blue does seem to suggest that we are going to be seeing some bond plays happening right now. Let's see what Hansen can pull out.
Another great thing about that climax play just there, not only did it push, also let 2 of Vince's characters, Fresh Cabbage's characters there. So he actually kind of used one card in his hand to get rid of Fresh Cabbages, and given that Vince is already +3 of getting a Clock Encore and his Brainstorm and his Apple Bond, it was a really good trade there. So if Fresh Cabbage doesn't maintain his advantage here, he might be able to push it back in his favor.
Right. Just the huge wall comes out now.
So this card, which we've been calling Apple, is the level 0 Kyoko in the back row. When it comes into play, you can pay 1 and salvage the level 1 Psyker, the 1055 vanilla. And as long as it's on the board, all of your level 1 Psychers, so the bond target, permanently gains 1k. So with 2 copies in the back row now, that's a 7/5 × 2 board. Pretty strong, having hit level 1 first here, and being on the defensive, you can hold the counter, and Vince now has to establish his own board while worrying about counters himself now. So yeah, it's strong combat play from Hansen.
Right, and I mean, level 1 bombs, not really a thing back then.
No, not at all. It was rather disadvantageous to open up your direct attack lane just to trade 1-for-1, where you can trade 1-for-1 using better methods. So yeah, it's definitely not a card that was played very often, and I don't even think Madoka had an effective one until the set after this one, so it's for sure that neither of them play those right now.
Well, hopefully Vince is going to have a solid response here, otherwise we might see the game spiral out of control very, very quickly.
Yeah. Hansen has got a very healthy 5 stock, so it's a bit hard to see sometimes with the...
Yeah, it looks like 5 stock.
Yeah. 5 stock and a board which is fairly likely to come back is very strong position to be in this kind of format. I think Brent's Brainstorms here, so he can refresh at level 1.
You as well?
Which doesn't happen all that often in this kind of format, but it is something that, is still beneficial. So I guess Vince, seeing that he isn't able to keep up with the board as effectively as he'd like to, and is going for the strong deck compression play and hoping that he can get some more climax value in his next deck to roll it back in his favor.
Right, and this definitely was a time when, you could hedge your bets on that, because finishes were not crazy back then. You couldn't necessarily just blow people out of the water and kill them in one turn. So making a late game bet is often a great call, and it looks like Vince has managed to come out with 2 of the Psychers and the climax.
Yeah. So that climax again is pumping 2 of his characters to a point where he can contest 2 lanes. So again, that's like a 2-for-1 here. And I'm a bit concerned about the fact that he had to play 2 climaxes over 2 turns and also blocked 1. So I'm assuming his hand quality hasn't really been too great for him for the early part of the game, but he is maintaining his resources, and Hansen also did not have a counter there. So they are kind of going tit for tat for resource in that element.
So we're looking at a bit of a grudge match right now, as far as I understand. These 2 players from opposing teams who have come in with the same deck to prove who is the best amongst each other. I believe Vince plays for TXC so it's a reasonably well-known team. Ken, do you happen to know who Hansen plays for?
Yeah, Hansen plays for Burn 1, so that's also a rather prominent team in North America. I don't know how much interaction these two players had personally in the past, but I'm definitely sure that they are feeling some level of pressure with the team representation on hand right now. I am also on the same team as Vince here, but I don't plan to spare him any roast. If he does anything terrifically awful, I will call him out on it.
Of course, I know Vince quite well from back in the day as well. So I'm watching him like a hawk here. I'm waiting for him to slip up. I'm just waiting for it, and we'll see if he manages to represent Australia well.
Right. So I think Hansen just searched a level 5 counter back in the day. 2K counters, one of those privilege cards. If you had one in your set, people would be rather envious of you, but Madoka wasn't one of those sets, so he's just holding a vanilla counter here, which is actually pretty powerful. Again, he does have the 775 setup, and being on the defensive this time, he does have the counter to protect his board. It's going to be much more difficult for Vince to contest that.
Vince with 5 climaxes out with only 3 cards left in deck. We see 1 in the clock as well, so potentially going to be a little bit dangerous going into this refresh, but we'll see what he can do. The gate off the top for that 2-1 level assist, and also a change. So a very key card.
All right, so Vince, all right, he had 2 cancels left in his deck, and that's 7 climaxes in bin with the 8th one in. So that is, again, a pretty strong refresh.
Yeah, not too bad at all. I think you can't be too mad about that, given that some of the plays that he had to make earlier were a little bit sketchy, but it ended up being strong. I think that's one of the great things about this game, just in general, is you do have to change what you're doing quite a lot. I mean, your game plan can change radically if you flip well or flip poorly, and being able to adjust to that is really a core skill.
Yeah.
So this last hit coming over the top for 3, plus the refresh, and Vince is looking at 1-6 going into his turn with Hansen at 2-0. So life level fairly stable, but in terms of tempo, I don't know. It's really could swing either way now that we've hit level 2. That change can be pretty devastating if there's no response to it. And again, anti-level plays were much harder to find. Much harder.
So both now having hit level 2, Vince does have access to his 2-1 refresher, but that card is, generally speaking, a vanilla unless you have 5 of your card deck, and having just refreshed on the previous turn, I don't think Vince will be pulling that off just yet. So right here, I think Vince, if possible, would want to take advantage of the fact that there is one very weak lane on Hansen's board. And he might even be able to place a Q-bait there, so he can clock on call the middle character if he is able to keep the 1 there. But he just missed his brainstorm, so I think he'll probably be going for a line where he kind of just bides this turn and finds an opening on the next one, or another turn following.
I think this is looking fairly stable, though. Refreshing with 7, kind of an empty brainstorm, but nonetheless, as long as he's not triggering double climax here, he should be fairly well set up for the following turn, even if he does have to make a bit of a weak attack.
Yeah. Well, actually, given that he refreshed with 7, even if he does trigger 2 climaxes here, unless it's something like triggering 2 gold, double stocking, he still does have a decent number of climaxes in his deck. And, he does get to plus off each trigger that he gets here, so it's not even that bad, even if he does trigger a little bit.
Does have the bond and the 2 apples on board to try and boost that up. So we are going to see a little bit of trading down happening on the board potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see what Vince goes for as he moves into his attacks.
Yeah. So given the positioning of his bond facing a level 1. Vince looks like he wants to fight at least 2 lanes this turn. He's definitely not going to side the middle and side the level 0 so he can maintain his own advantage. It seems a bit wasteful to do that. Given that, Hansen on defense can also just set up his own sort of play to out it. So yeah, I think Vince is still just playing kind of it for value right here.
Yeah, and I think potentially he could be looking at my opponent's now at level 2. Does he have blue in the level? I believe Hansen has blue. Psyker's Wish is online. He could be looking at trying to proc those early and just get some value out of them as soon as possible. It's definitely it's a complex matchup for sure. The double trigger that I was talking about, little bit iffy. Could potentially be opening up a bit of weakness, but like you said, he does get to +1 off that. And out comes the counter.
Yeah.
He did get that change though.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good setup, given that Vince knew that Hansen has a counter here, because if Hansen does want to maintain his board, he has to use the counter, but Vince doesn't technically lose a card because he was going to trade equally anyway. So while it makes Hansen use a card out of his hand, which is the same result as him not using it, but just on the board instead, it means that Vince doesn't have to risk anything additional just to force the card. So yeah, it's a very strong play here.
And Vince finishing up that turn by pinging a climax off the top. Hansen can make a pretty passive play here if he wants to. There's 2 open lines, a fairly weak level 0. Doesn't really need to commit a whole lot to this turn in order to make something happen. To be honest, it'd be interesting to see if he chooses to clock and he just goes straight into the change. Brainstorm comes out as well.
That's interesting. Given that his board is in a decent position, I thought he might want to keep a little of that stock to have a few more options later down the line, but I guess he valued his hand size here instead.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I sort of didn't expect that that Brainstorm to come out either. Maybe he's thinking of something that we've missed, some sort of setup that he wants to go for in the level 3 line. We do see 3-2 Madoka in the bin as well. The changes on the board. I mean, it's just a question of when he wants to go for it. I know he's got them definitely in his hand, definitely got them in the bin. They're everywhere. But it is a matter of when you want to pull the trigger on that, because they will be happening.
Yeah. So Hansen searches the level 3 Miki Sayaka, 10k, gains 500 for each other magic character you have, and when it reverses, it goes to memory, but you can dodge that drawback by sending it to the waiting room as part of Sayaka's Wish's effect. And speaking of Sayaka's Wish, there is one Sayaka on Vince's board right here, which he can use to fuel his own Sayaka's Wish, but he has 0 cards in Clock. So yeah, by attacking here first, Hansen is playing around Vince's Sayaka's Wish, which could have just turned into a 1-stock pure heal, which doesn't even use hand. Good play from him there by front attacking it first before Vince gets cards in his Clock.
Yeah, very true. It is a level 2 heal. Although Vince was forced to level 1 of those Sayaka's Wishes, so he will have access to just a little bit less healing in the long term. But these games can end up going down to the wire very, very long term as well, getting into those double-digit turns. So potentially that single heal can actually make quite a lot of difference, especially when we're talking about 2 decks that they don't win the game by playing a massive finisher or anything like that. They win the game by turning cards sideways. And when that's your win condition, every bit of damage matters, and those free freshes matter, and those heals matter, and being able to keep those little incremental bits of value is very, very important. So Vince I don't know, kind of looks like he's in a bit of a tough spot right now.
Yeah, I think the fact that Hansen was level up pretty early on and set up his board has always just kind of put him in an advantage when it comes to trading resources, and that's rather just carried on every turn. Vince has kind of kept up. That's another. It's a pretty good hit on the brainstorm.
Double hit on the brainstorm, pretty good.
But this is a deck where you don't have very powerful on-demand power pump kind of cards, so yeah, I think Vince is always just kind of playing catch up. He's not awfully behind, but is always never quite ahead. So I think that's where Hansen has been getting his positional advantage from right here.
Tarina in the chat is made the very, very good comment that finishes in 2012 are we Shakujan no Shana. Very true. That was one of the few decks that had a proper finisher. Finishes were different back in the day. If you played Kanan, your finisher was +4 soul. So yeah, a different time. We're looking at Vince has got a lot of resources, and so it's looking like he's going to have to pivot towards level 3, setting up some sort of impenetrable wall, and really trying to draw that advantage out from the increased number of, oh geez, we're seeing these 1-0s come back down again. It's really the cornerstone card of this entire matchup, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, there was we saw what I think this card's been played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 times in this game across both
Something
players.
Like that,
yeah.
That's another climax drop from Vince, but this time instead of matching, he's able to go 1k higher than Hansen's characters. So if Hansen doesn't have a backup here, that might be the first time that Vince gets the board advantage.
And I think if you're Hansen, you're also thinking to yourself, even if you do have the backup, is it really worth it here?
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a pretty real chance that he's going to be at level 3.
Yeah, if he takes 2 of these attacks, he's going to be on 2. After that, it's rather questionable whether you want to keep your level 1. But
yeah, so we do have Sayaka's Wish on top right now.
Yeah. Alright, so if Hansen has a wish here, he can sacrifice one of his Sayakas, get the wish back in his hand, and then use that the other one. It's a very good play. You don't lose hand, you technically don't lose cards because they're going to go to the waiting room anyway. And you just heal 2 for 2 stock. It's pretty good.
Let's see if we can line that up. Here we go. It looks like it's happening.
For 2, right?
There's the heal to hand. Hits the cancel. Wow. What a fantastic line that we just saw. The heal to hand, pick up a heal, and then potentially another heal to hand right now. Really strong stuff. And Vince is going to be feeling a bit of the burn from that, for sure. Decides to go for the front attack anyway. And out comes the counter. Whoa. 2 more Sayaka's wishes go straight into clock. Wow. Looks like Vince just tossing up whether or not he wants to go for that that good old innate encore, the old pay 3 encore.
Yeah.
Build your own build your own card advantage.
We have seen one of those from Hansen so far, I think. It's significantly more common in 2012 than it is right now. I do think we'll be seeing a few more of those today.
Absolutely. And we're interesting that we get to see this this heal loop gameplay. You don't have your your 0/0 or anti-salvages, or your 2/1 anti-heals, or shout-outs to Little Busters, to stop all of this joy from happening. Oh no! Instead, you've got to grind through it. So we'll see that Psycho's Wish going to memory as well. It's an upside and a downside, isn't it? Because of course it does take it out of the game, right? You can't heal with it forever, but it also does take it out of the game, which means it's not going into your clock.
It's also that the way that resources were back in the day is somewhat unlikely that you'd actually like to draw that many copies, maybe like 5. You just run out of resources at that point, and you can't really afford to use that many. So I think going to memory is a bit stronger than not going to memory for this card.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a really powerful one, and definitely one of the most powerful cards that existed. And really part of the reason this deck was so scary was just how cheap it was to keep looping out these enormous heal turns, maintaining card advantage. It was really oppressive at times. If you weren't ready for it, you weren't using a deck that could put through a little bit more pressure, then sometimes you'd be a bit stuck facing some of these decks. And I mean, now we look at this and we say, oh, you're playing, level 1 vanillas and bonding into a level 1 vanilla. Doesn't seem too crazy, but as just a staple fundamental way of playing the game, it's quite demonstrative, I think. I really quite enjoy this format just because of how much it tests your fundamentals.
It's not only that you have 1 stock to convert into a character, but it's also that the character is able to fight for board after it lands, and that's another point where you get tested on how you keep your card resources and all of that stuff. So yeah, I agree with Phil here. I think it's a very testing kind of format.
And it looks like we get to see our first copy of the level 3, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that is a foil ultimate Madoka. It's a
foil version.
And I think both players are playing the gold bar here, so it has a climax combo where if you play the gold bar, you can send ultimate Madoka to memory, play out the 3/2. I think the card name is Homura Fights On from your deck, and give it 3k until the end of your opponent's turn. So that wasn't, I believe, the most popular play. I think Book was quite popular back then as well, but in this deck it does let you put up a 14/5, which when front attack lets you surveil, and it is very good again at fighting for board, which is one primary way of maintaining a card advantage. So yeah, it's pretty good here.
And I mean, look, it's safe. I think that's kind of the main thing with it, isn't it? It's a very, very safe card. It can be very difficult to deal with, and just some decks were just totally locked out of the game once this card hit the board, just because of the ridiculous amount of power that you would get on that other 3/2. And it did have the I think that Homura was the first instance of the those top check effects that we have now. When you get attacked, checking the top card of your deck and putting it on top or bottom, which gives you that additional defense, which, again, when there are no finishes necessarily in the game other than restanding or the occasional burn one or the occasional clock kick, being able to check top card is pretty huge. Going through this attack seems nothing too much out of the ordinary, nothing too interesting on the attack order, but we do see some pretty... There we go, the first Psycho's Wish coming out for Vince here.
Yeah, and he had a climax for his hand, the gold bar specifically, so Vince might be able to get his ultimate Madoka combo off before Hansen does, in order to step over his opposing ultimate Madoka. But being on 3 stock here, Vince is only going to be able to heal once, and I'm not sure how happy he would be about that one.
Yeah, so that 3/2 coming out with a change and a heal is a very, very powerful card. But of course, you do have to keep it on the board if you want that that climax combo to work. So being able to get rid of it before he can resolve that is going to be pretty huge in terms of trying to figure out the advantage. And of course, if you are putting these 3/2 Madokas into your memory, which is what the climax combo does, then you are helping out your refreshers if you do have to go into those even deeper game states. So it can be, again, one of these things where we're investing short-term tempo for some really, really important long-term advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But Vince does manage to come out with the blue 3/2, the Sayaka. This is another just beefy unit. It's just massive, right? I mean, it gets up to what, 12,000 in total?
Yeah, 12k on its own on a full board, and it has a level support hit, so 13.5 once Vince plays his 5th character down, and that's higher than any number that Madoka, the ultimate Madoka, can reach on defense with 1 counter. So that's guaranteed win lane here. Definitely is there is a benefit here from Hansen not having played down the level 2 support, so Vince can know that he's going to win that lane.
So we just have to ask ourselves, is this going to be another wish?
Well, both players do have a wish target available, so I'm pretty sure they'd both be keen to use it.
Hansen, the first one to get to level 3, so it's looking. Oh no, sorry, I apologize. Vincent is on 3-1. I can't count.
This climax play is a bit interesting from Vince. He's playing the climax without using. It doesn't particularly affect whether or not he wins the lane that much. It does mean that the level 1 facing Hansen's level 1 is 2k over and out of level 1 backup range, but it is a bit questionable whether Hansen would want to save that character to begin with. So right here, it does look like he just used the gold bar in his hand to get rid of it. And yeah, it seems like the value that he got out of Wish used last turn was a bit low. He had to add that card to his hand as opposed to a character or event that he could have played later down the line or saved. At least in terms
you
of
think pushing damage was maybe that was what was in his mind? Just really needed to push
in terms of damage, that definitely helped. So yeah,
I mean, we are looking at, finally, are we finally in the late game of this snail pace matchup?
I guess I would call this the late game. Now we're both level 3. I believe this attack is for. Sorry, I wasn't paying close attention, but if this attack does stick, Hansen does get pushed up to a substantial amount of damage, so he's also not going to be able to heal down straight to 3-0.
He's sitting with 5 stock, which is, a reasonable amount for sure.
Yeah, it's not small.
Oh, the cancel.
Cancel there.
Whew. Whew. Ooh. Beautiful cancel off the top. Definitely a pivot point for sure.
Yeah.
Starting this turn at 3-2 instead of 3-3 is going to make clocking feel a lot more comfortable if he wants to do that.
Yeah.
But it looks like no need. Just going straight in. Here comes heal number 1.
Yep.
Are we going to see heal number 2? There we go. Heal number 2. Down to 3-0. Very, very clean. Very clean.
If Hansen does have the level support here, he can make his board as strong as it can get, really, while also not really wasting that stock, because he can also use that 1 extra stock to turn his level support into a heal if he so desires later. But interestingly, he doesn't fill the board.
Doesn't look like he's got it. I wonder what his hand could be that he doesn't want anything to go into that extra slot.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If it were climaxes, he probably would have played one, so he can contest the board on one lane or even just push damage a bit better. But seems not. So my guess would be Sayaka's Wish, but
Sure.
all right, here's another Sayaka's Wish.
Vince just takes that. I mean, I don't know. I think
Attack here. For 3.
if I'm Vince, I'm fairly happy with this, and a nice cancel for Vince
Yeah.
for sure. A really
If
nice cancel.
Vince had taken that 4, it may have been very different.
Attack here.
I know he didn't take that 4, so yeah, it's a very good position to be in right now. Cancels there.
Alrighty, and now we're looking like Vince is in a pretty, I would say, commanding position.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So he has 3 stock, which normally would just be 1 heal in this format because stock heal not invented all the way until Kisniver, but he does have the option
Shouts
to
to
pay
the boys. Can I get some F's in the chat for Kisniver?
Yeah, Chidori is the first heal to stock if anyone was. Alright, so it looks like Vince chooses not to use the 1 stock to turn his back row into an ultimate Madoka and heal 1. His deck size is a bit thicker than 5, so unfortunately he won't be able to free refresh this turn with that 1 stock. Which is
Look at the double level support.
Yeah, his board is strong. So yeah, the field is looking a lot stronger for Vince right now. And Hansen being on 3-0 here, at least one of his Psychers is going to have to go to memory. This one also will have to go to memory unless Hansen deems it worthy using 1 stock 1 hand just to stop it from doing so, but right, he does cancel that.
Wow. Some big hits coming out here.
Alright, and that's 3 stock.
A huge board coming out. Double Chidori, double Hisoka, and Bodyguard in the middle, backed up with heal counter is broken. Yeah, shout outs to my week 1 build for Kisniver.
How many climax are you at?
Oh man, what a time. That was good fun.
Alright, so where are we?
Hansen with a really big board here though. Oh, sorry, this is Vince with the big board. Not Hansen. I think I'm reading against my own countrymen too much. But yeah, look, that those 2 blue 3/2s are just enormous. That center slot it's gonna stay there. I think. I mean, I'd be very impressed if we managed to see that disappear. But you never know. The double proc on the brainstorm. We'll see how that manages to go. What do you think he's getting here?
It might be the free refresh. Based on what I can currently see, it looks like his deck should be relatively thin by the time he finishes searching. But if that was an option, I believe it would just be an immediate decision. So seeing as that's not coming, all right. So he gets another copy of the 1/0, which gives the cards in front hand encore and changes into a card which I don't believe is being played in this deck. And that's the 3/2 Kyoko, which has come into play salvage a character. And you can pay 1 and rest 2 of your characters for it to gain 2k and the ability to send a character it reverses to the top of the opponent's deck. So it's very hard to judge what's going on here. I'm not entirely sure how many cards are in Hansen, but he might be using the salvage effect of Kyoko to get the free refresh and pump his board to at least be able to fight 1 Sayaka. Scanning his deck size there, so that might be the case.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. It looks like he's maybe decided that going for heal looping is not going to be the play here. Going to have to finish the game off in some other way.
Yeah.
This is going to be a pretty tense turn.
That free refresh is, in one way, a heal, because you do get to dodge your refresh points. which is an inevitable point of damage that you take when your deck runs out. So it's good in that sense, and it also pumps 2k to your entire board after landing. So I believe that no, that wouldn't be enough to be able to reverse either one of those Sayakas, but yeah, it does count as a one stock heal one way, so it's definitely one way to come back.
I feel like he might need a little bit more. I mean, this is kind of a rough position to have to face, especially with only 3 stock.
Yeah, he only has 3 stock, and is currently on 3/3. So the best he can do is play a free refresh and heal once, which he's doing the free refresh first.
That's it right there. Is the free refresh goes straight into it. He did hesitate there for a moment, so I wonder what he was thinking.
It is maybe possible that he was considering to set some character in his waiting room before he does that. It does only put 1 extra card in the waiting room as you pay 2 stock and return 1 to your hand, but looks like he decided against that play.
It's it's perhaps worth noting that the free fresh, it does actually have a little second effect where you can buff a specific like common 2/2 or a rare 2/2 that I don't think I've ever seen anyone play. Get to buff it a little bit, put some markers underneath it or something along those lines.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact text, but it's a card that gains markers every refresh, but this card doesn't let you refresh it. Kind of lets you pretend that you did anyway, and puts a marker under that card. Sorry, puts up to 2 markers. So it's
2
actually
markers,
stronger than
right.
generally refreshing. But yeah, no one really plays that card because it's just not very good.
Yeah, too expensive to get out. Doesn't really do too much other than just be a big old beat stick.
Yeah.
We see the 3/2 hit the board, but of course this is a salvage, not a heal. And we're going to be seeing some crashing happening now.
Yeah. Right.
The gate trigger post-refresh, not always what you want to be seeing, but of course, with the hand on core, it's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more palatable.
It does look like Hansen put the hand on core behind the wrong character here, as he's jump attacking with both of those, unless he wants to encore those in order to avoid taking direct attack hits. But I would have thought that maybe he wanted to encore 3/2, surviving 1 extra turn hit.
Manages to come in for 3, and the cancel. Now Vince is in a very comfortable spot.
He
A double
scans his
encore.
characters. I think Vince is considering whether or not he wants to change one of his level supports to heal once before he draws the last card of his deck. But opts not to. Which...
Is that because he doesn't have any? No, surely not.
No, I believe it's impossible to not have any in the waiting room. I think... well, in doing so, he would pay 1 and send a character to the waiting room, bring 1 out. So he would put 2 extra cards in his waiting room. But generally speaking, that level of compression is somewhat negligible in the face of healing 1. So I guess for Vince, he just decided that he has enough other ways of bringing the game in his favor here. I think if he has a heal in his hand and a Psycho's Wish, he definitely doesn't really need to do that heal. So that's one thing. And also a double level support back row, just in general, gives him a stronger board. So
yeah, heal out of hand. Yeah. And a climax here to perhaps push some damage could be a little bit scary.
Yeah, I did say at the beginning of the game, I wasn't entirely sure how gold bar would affect how this game goes, but at least from Vincent, he has been using a lot of gold bars, and each one pretty effectively from what it seems. So yeah, maybe gold bar is the stronger play as opposed to what I thought.
We're looking at a pretty scary position right now.
Yeah, that's
the 3/5.
2 attacks of 2 at 3/5. So Hansen now has to cancel 2 attacks.
And the gold bar comes out.
Right,
and there we go.
He takes the damage.
And he takes it and goes to level 3 with 7 in clock. And that will be our first feature match over. Congratulations to Vince. He's managed to clean that one up with a very stable line towards the end. Really took a conservative play there. Just went straight for the level supports and just decided to play it out as cleanly as he possibly could, not putting too much pressure on, trying to maintain as much advantage once he got that pivot point, and really did come back from was, you know, objectively kind of a bad position in the early game. So well done to Vince for sure. Definitely a good one there. So we'll see if we can how all the other games are going. But I think we'll be close to the end of the round for pretty much everyone. It was a pretty solid gameplay for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general, it was great. So we're going to we've got about 5 minutes left in the round while these guys clean up. What did you think of that game, Ken? Thoughts overall?
Yeah, I think it was a very good show of how this format kind of plays out. And climaxes are often used for that rather than just pushing damage. You don't play you're not playing climax combos a lot of the time, so you don't do these things where you keep a bunch of level 1s in your hand in the climax and say, you know, I don't care how my level 0 goes, I'm just going to get a lot of advantage. It's a lot more incremental. Every turn matters, every action matters a lot more. There's no easy swingbacks. So yeah, I'm glad this first game really displayed that and didn't end up being something like, oh, I played too much.
All right. So in light of that game, we're just going to wrap up and have a look at some admin stuff behind the scenes, guys. Thank you very much for joining us at our feature table, and we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. We'll see you then.